Well, this is somewhat of a surprise visit, and so Franey's caught a little off guard. And, she just, here she is. Can you imagine? I mean, if any one of you wanted to just start traveling around the U.S. and some Baba center snatched you up and said, talk. So what we're going to do tonight is try to set up a little bit of an interview. And Franey will share some of her stories from the very beginning. Where she was born in near the trust, or born in Bombay, but lived at the trust compound all the way from day one. So we can get started, and maybe we could start with, now we could talk about, let's see, there's quite a lineage between all these connections, and as you know, every time somebody comes over from India and talks about this and this and this, like Katie, when she was just here, all these connections and cousins and so forth. So maybe we could get a sort of a breakdown. Like you said, your grandparents came from Iran.
Yes, just as much as Katie's grandparents came from Iran. It was during the Mughal persecution, so the Iranis had to.
Can you hear?
No. Can all of you hear?
See if you can mic it up a little bit. Testing. Jay Baba.
And I won't go into detail about that. I mean, the Iranis were persecuted during the Mughal invasion into Iran, so they had to evacuate. And so that's when most of the Iranis, Zoroastrians especially, came and lived in India. And so my grandparents came. And my parents were born in India. And then my parents they got married and lived in the trust office, which is the trust office. It was known as Khashru quarters in those days. We lived in a joint family system. Adi Senior's family lived where Pat Sumner's has her office. And we lived where Mani has her office. And my uncle Sarosh lived where Bauji has his family. So, I mean, you could say I grew up till about 11 in the trust building. And I used to see Baba as a toddler, but I didn't know who he was. He used to come and visit Gulmai, Adi Senior's mother. And I think on one occasion I saw Pasni Maharaj as a youngster too. But I will just give you sort of a brief connection that Adi Senior was my father's and my uncle's first cousin. So we were all interrelated, and being a joint family system, all the children used to gather together always at this trust building at Khashru quarters. So I think at the age of 11, I was more aware of Baba, and my mother took me to Baba for my first meeting. He had come to Gulmai, and so I was pretty nervous. I was a youngster, and I sat down with all the other people around Baba, and we had a little meeting. I don't remember anything, but I remember looking up at him, and he looked so beautiful, really beautiful. He had this beautiful long flowing hair. And after the meeting, we all had to just bow down to him, meet him, embrace him, and go. And I remember vaguely that somebody asked, "Who is this?" And I think a Western lady asked, and Baba said, Adi Senior was interpreting, and he said, "Oh well, she has a lot to travel." And that's all he said, and I was waiting for the travel all my life till now.
How old were you, Franey?
When I met Baba, about 11 something, first meeting. And anyway, there are lots of incidents. I mean, it could take a whole evening, a whole day, but I'll try and tell you a few things as I remember them, my important ones, which I feel important. Once I think I spent most of my life in a boarding school, so I used to come home on holidays only, and that was the time when, if the occasion was there, Baba had invited any Baba pilgrims or followers to Meherabad up on the hill for any function like Mehera's birthday. Then if we were invited, my mother used to take me. And on one such occasion, I was about 13. And my mother used to be very angry with me. Every time I came home from school, she used to say, "Why do you grow so tall? Every time I have to get you a new set of clothing." So I said, well, I didn't know why I got tall. Anyway, we went to this gathering that Baba had invited us to. It was a nice function. There was a program, Mani had done a show for Mehera's birthday. And after all that ended, it was lovely sitting around watching with Baba. And then we had to leave. So we all had to say our goodbyes. And my mother's and my turn came to say goodbye to Baba. And my mother said goodbye. And Baba asked my mother, well, how is she doing in school? So my mother said, well, there's nothing to worry about her school or her health. She just grows and I'm getting tired of it. So can you put a stone on her head to stop her from growing? So my mother said, Baba smiled and I thought, oh my goodness, I was feeling so embarrassed in front of Baba, all this. So finally Baba raised his hand and I said, oh my dear, now this is going to be it, I'm not going to grow. And he put his hand on my head. And next term I came, I didn't grow an inch. No, I didn't. I stopped growing from the age of 13. So I remember that so, it's still sharp in my memory. And what else did I was telling you.
Well, I thought there was some interesting notes about the trust compound.
Yeah.
This is before Baba was around the trust that much. But you were living in what is now Mani's office?
That's right. That whole row of rooms was our family, my family's, living quarters. And then we used to have a communal dining room and eat. The children ate first and the parents ate later on and all that. And that went on till about, I think 11 and a half, 12, and then Baba separated the three families, each one, and Saroshankar and Vilu auntie went to the house they are living in now, Vilu lives in now, and my parents lived in the cantonment there too. And Adi Senior continued to live where the trust is, and he donated that to Baba for Baba's work. So that's my beginning of Baba, and then from there on I sort of continued to meet him as a youngster every time I had an opportunity, and not realizing I would be marrying into his family, at the time. I never had a clue that I would, which I did. And the incidents of my marrying, the time I married, Baba had, the day I married, Baba had called me before the official wedding. He called both Adi and myself to Adi Senior's office. And he made us sit down. He sat down first and he made me sit down on his right. And we sort of tried to calm me, because I always was very nervous with Baba. I was so nervous, I felt frightened every time I was with Baba. I didn't have to, but of course he was God and he was nervous. So anyway, he calmed me down. He began playing his little games. He asked me if I did this, I could do this, and he did something like this. And he made me do all that. And then he called Adi and made him sit on his left, and then just he put his hands in each other's hands and put his hand on both our hands. And that was it. And then he embraced each of us. And we left for the official wedding. And then after that, we stayed in Ahmednagar for a few years, and then we moved to Pune, where at one time we were in Pune for 2.5 years, and no, a year and a half, and Baba gave us a surprise visit. He was on his way to Satara with the mandali, with men mandali. And I had just finished feeding Bilu's children and Dara, my stepson, and they were staying with us, they were schooling in Pune. So suddenly Adi calls out and says, there's a car coming in. It looks like Baba's car. I said, oh dear, I have no food, now what do I do? I mean, this was a surprise that Baba has never done this to me. And I was again nervous. I said, now I've got to get my best china out. Everything was falling from my hands, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I didn't know if there was enough food, but we just finished eating rice and dal and some fish, and those were the favorite food of Baba, luckily enough. So I had enough for him, but not all the men folk, you know. So anyway, it was Baba. Baba came in. I was laying the table and things were falling from my hands. He was holding my hands and saying, not to worry, not to worry. And then he had just about 2 mouthfuls, but he had, you know, it was such a surprise that he came, you know, without announcing anything. And I was getting all embarrassed that the food wasn't good. But he ate, and he said he was satisfied. And he, after a little while, he rested a bit and went on his way to Satara. So that, again, you know, Baba, the way one copes and at a situation like that, you know, you're nervous, but it happens. He sort of calms you down. I mean, many occasions he's done that to me. And we stayed in Pune, I think, for about 2.5 years, 3 years, and we got fed up of this moving around. So we decided we had to host, I think I'm going out of sequence here, never mind. We had to host, Francis Brabazon and Don Stevens had come to Ahmednagar. So we were their hosts and hostess, and we got talking with Don, and Don suggested he would sponsor us to come and stay in America and all that. So we asked Baba, and Baba said, no, not America. If you want to go anywhere, go to England. So that's how we were in England, you know, because Baba said no to America. But before we went to live there in 52, since I didn't have a honeymoon, Adi felt that I should go somewhere, and Baba was planning this visit to the West with the ladies and the men mandali, you know, when he had the accident in 52. So Adi asked, can I go and he go? And Baba said, no, but you can both go to London and wait there, and when my party comes to Europe, you can join them. So that was what he planned to do. And so we said, well, something is better than nothing, you know. If we can go to London, we you know, because Baba said no America, so probably he didn't want me to go to America then, I don't know. Anyway, so we went 2 weeks ahead of their going, and so we went to London, and we had to wait for them for about after 6 weeks. And they go off, and when we were there about 3 or 4 weeks, we heard that the accident has occurred. So we get news from Dr. Donkin that, you know, Baba wants us to leave immediately. So, goodness me, now how we had no return ticket money. Anyway, he said not to worry about the money, everything will be arranged, but we have to go at a certain time he gave us. And that time had to be done, fulfilled. And it was the height of the season, you know, people going. It was the shipping, you know, on the ships in those days, the aeroplanes weren't so frequent. So we said, it's Baba's order, we may as well do something about it. So we went to the shipping company in London and said, look, because Baba had made it clear, you can go first class, second class, tourist class, any class, cargo, whatever, freight, whatever, but go. He wanted us out of London, you know. So we said, now what do we do? We went to the piano company, and the man just looked aghast. He said, look, you won't get any ship on the day you want to go. So we said, look, but we have to go. sort of, we made such an emphasis, we have to go on that day. Put us on a waiting list, something will happen. He said, you won't get it. He showed us 3 pages of waiting list names. So I told Adi, I said, look, please put our names down, never mind, at least Baba will think that we've done something, we have done it, we put our names down. So the man said, I'm putting it down, but you won't have any luck. And we put our names down, and we went home to the bedsit we were living at, and I was getting worried, not so much Adi. I said, my goodness, if we don't obey Baba's order, what will happen, if we don't find a ship? Anyway, the next morning we get up, and about 10 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings, and I go to answer it. And it's the shipping company man. He said, there are 2 berths going on the day you want. I couldn't. I said, are you sure? He said, yes, they're first class, but they're going, do you want it? So I was just amazed and shocked. I couldn't believe it, So Adi was shouting, what's happening? I said, we've got 2 cabins, a double cabin on the first class going on the day we want to go. Of course, he didn't believe it too, and he came up and spoke to the man, and he said, no, there is. If you want to go, it's there. So we said, please book it, we have to go. So then Adi felt after that, we felt relieved that we've done our part of the duty. So then Adi felt a bit sad that he couldn't take me to Europe. So he said, we have a few days, we'll go to Paris. So he had to make all the arrangements with Anita Vieira, Roger's Anita. So he phones her up, and she says, yes, I'll book you in. I have a friend who's a guide in a hotel near the Arc de Triomphe. And so we book a flight to Paris, and it was £10 then for 2 people return. Just imagine, £10 return for 2 people. Wow. So we go there, and of course, I didn't sleep the 4 nights I was there. I was awake all day and night, but the guide turned out to be an American. She was an American guide, and she was interested in Baba. And I've never had such, Baba really must have planned it all out, because she was the best guide I could have had. She took me everywhere in 4 days. But she made me walk. She made me walk. And Adi wouldn't get up during the day. He would sleep during the day and come for the nightlife. So I had to do both, but at least I had a bit of the European cities, I had some idea of what Europe looked like then. And we went back home, of course, sad that Baba had that accident, and everybody was very worried at that time what the situation was and how it was. But it took months before they came back home. And after that, as I said, hosting Francis, this topic of where to go and live. Baba said, not America, so we planned to go to England, and we had booked our cabins again, our berths on the ship in 55 of August, and we paid our deposits, and Baba said everything's fine. He told us to do the bookings, and we paid our deposit, and then suddenly, about a week before we were due to leave, we get a cable from Baba, cancel all bookings. You're not going, I'll tell you when to go. So we had to cancel everything, and we had packed, so we didn't know after that when we would go. So, and we were living with my parents, and they couldn't have us indefinitely. So we had to find a place to live for a little while. And probably some of you have seen that picture of Baba standing in between me and Adi with his arms like this near a house. I don't know if you've seen it, or it's in one of the, I don't know, anyway. So we had to find a little flat. And you all are familiar with Ahmednagar, Daulat and all that. Well, those buildings along Daulat. In those days, it was much nicer than what it is now. The housing was much better. So we had to ask Vilu Aunty in Saroshankun. We rented a place for the time that Baba would say, you can go. So we had that place for about 4 months, and then I think it was January of 56, Baba called Adi to Satara and said, now you can go in January, late January. Now, it didn't occur to us then why he didn't want to go, let us go in August of 55. But afterwards we realized, because he didn't want either me or Adi to experience the severe winter London had that year. It would have been our first winter in England. He thought then, neither of us would like England would come away, So that's why he cancelled it. So he knew beforehand that this was going to be the situation. So, one doesn't realize it at the time, and you think, oh, Baba, why does he change plans? But he has a reason, always. And so that, again, was another thing that I learned with Baba. You've got to accept and listen to what he says, and no questioning him and why and what, wherefore, And so, what more can I say, John? Just remind me, push me a bit.
I think we skipped the story now, I'm not sure.
Have you? Which one?
Now, you mentioned the story, let's see, right after you were married.
After I was married?
About a year or two after you were married. You said there was some special experience you had with Audie and you and Baba. You remember
Did
that? No?
No, I think that was the incident. No, did I? Oh, after we were married, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In England, you mean? Was it in England?
Well, I don't know the location, but I know that you mentioned there was... We went through a lot of stories of that.
When we were in England, when we arrived in England in 56 finally, and escaped the severe winter, although we could see the people who had suffered, because everything was... All the pipes were frozen, there was people, it was in a very bad way. London didn't have central heating in those days. So, a lot of elderly people died, young died. So we had a hard time finding a place. Few days we stayed with Delia, and then with Minta, her sister, who lent us a basement flat. And in the meantime, I was training to be a beautician. And Adi was trying to find some work, he was finding very difficult. And finding flat was difficult. People used to shut the door on your face because you're a foreigner. So anyway, I happened to finish my training, and I was looking for a job since Adi couldn't find a job. And that was getting difficult. So finally, when Baba on his way to Europe in 56, and I think America again, he stopped over in London. This was in the month of June after I'd finished my course, and we all went to the hotel to see him, where all the British Baba people had gone. And then Adi and I had a private audience with him, and Baba asked me if I'd found a job. I said no, because Adi at that point was really wanting to return back to India. He didn't like England at all. He was getting fed up of the food and everything. because we couldn't find, there were no Indian places then. Now it's completely inundated with Indians in London. But before, you couldn't find a shop where you could find any Indian spices or anything. So it was difficult, and I didn't know even how to cook in those days. So, he was thinking that Baba will say, pack up and go. So he asked me, and I said, well, I haven't found a job, Baba, but I'm trying. So Baba said, well, he thought about it, and then he gave me another time limit. He said, look, if you don't find a job at this time, up to that day, then you must pack up and go. That was about 2 months or something, gave me the time. So I thought that was agreeable. I was a little bit despondent and sad. Because I was getting to like England, I had such a sheltered and cloistered life. I wanted the freedom a bit, away from family. So I was sort of inwardly thinking, I hope Baba does some miracle and something happens, I get a job or something. Fine. Well, anyway, just before we ended our meeting, he then asked me, he said, do you want a baby? I said, Baba, I don't know. If you want me to have one, I'd love one. He said, well, I'll see about it. So I said, oh, well, and then we had to say our goodbyes, which is always sad when you leave Baba, And I was getting a little bit bolder now to talk to Baba. So I felt a little, relaxed with him now. And he realized that I was feeling relaxed, and he was, happy that I was, getting stronger in every way. And then he left, and then I had to go through all the newspapers again, have interviews, find where I can work. And so I was walking along all over London trying to, go to all these different places, everywhere I went. In those days, there were hardly any beauty salons except for these big main beauty houses. So nobody would take you, and these big beauty salons, so you want an experience. And I used to say, but then how does one get experience if you don't take us, So they said, no, we have our employees. So anyway, I still trudged along, I had the time. And it was just, I think, a week left now, and that was the time when Baba had said, if I didn't find a job, we had to go. But he was feeling happy about it. So anyway, I went, this is one interview I had, and I told Adi, I said, look, all right, you win. I said, if I don't get this, we'll go. And but I told him, I said, you come with me, and also come and pick me up in case, I'll feel miserable if I don't get the job. Anyway, we went, and it was, I don't know if any of you know London, it was in one of the posh shopping streets, Bond Street, So I went there, and I went into where I had to be interviewed, and there was a whole line of young girls, absolutely all of them young. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm at the end. I have no chance with this lot, So one thing Minta told me, because I used to stay at her flat. Minta was Delia's younger sister. You must have heard about her in the Lord Mayor stories. I used to give her mass out sometimes, and so she told me, she said, look, Franey, instead of going in a sari, why don't you wear a dress? And cut your hair. I had long hair. So I said, all right. And I did that. And I went up and waited in the queue, and the queue went shorter till my turn came. And I was surprised that, that I was still being called. I thought that the man would come out and say, no more. But I was the last one in the queue, waiting. Finally, I go in, and he, does the interview, and then after a little while he says, oh, when can you come? Yeah, I was just shocked, because I thought, with all those numbers of girls, he would have chosen anyone. And, but I was quite shocked. I thought, oh, this is Baba's work. I don't know why, but I felt that at once. And then I said, well, when do you want me to come? And he said, well, next week. And then I said, can it be the other week? And then we agreed. And so that was how I got my job. So at least one thing of what Baba said, I thought, well, Baba's done something here. He's really, he must have understood my feelings, and he's let me stay on in England. And I was happy. I was working, and about 6 weeks or 7 weeks afterwards, going to work, I was feeling a little bit uneasy, so I went to the doctor.
Oh no!
I went to the doctor. And the Adi said, he pushed me, he said, go to the doctor. I said, well, I went and, he examined me. And then he came out and he said, you're expecting. I said, no. He said, yeah. I said, no. I said, you sure? I kept on repeating, And I said, oh my goodness, I've just started work. What will those people think, And I said, no. So anyway, that's how Baba works.
How long did you work for them?
Well, I had to continue. I couldn't leave immediately, so I worked for about 7.5 months. But nobody knew I was expecting. I was very small. And another story is that we had to find a house, and we were living in a small little, just big size room only, and you couldn't bring up a baby in it. And we were also planning to bring Dara over. So we thought, well, we'll have to look for a house. And luckily, at that time, we were allowed, the Indian currency had some value then, the rupee had some value. So, through a friend, she sort of bought, her name bought the house. We bought the house that I sold just a month before I had Shireen, 4 weeks. And that was a lucky stroke, and it was my home. It was my first and only home, really, where I stayed the longest, because I didn't even stay in my mother's home for long. Just come home for holidays and away, and then got married. So I never had a home, really. So this Meher, which Baba, we had chosen the names, and Baba chose the name that we had for the house. And so Shireen was born there, and I took her as a baby to Ahmednagar when she was 3 months old. And the next morning, Baba called me to Mehera, and there was money and Boher only, and for some reason Mehera wasn't there. So then Baba asked me to, took Shireen from me. She was 3 months, but she looked about 7 months. And I felt, oh my goodness, she's going to do something on his lap, because he had her for such a long time. He had nothing under her. And I said, oh. And there he was looking at her, and she was looking up at him. I didn't have a camera. I wish I could have taken some pictures. And she was smiling up, giving up, and Mani was so amazed. She said she's never seen so much attention from a 3-month-old baby looking at Baba's eyes, It was just amazing. It was just wonderful, she was a gift to me from Baba. That I know. She is a gift from me to Baba.
So Baba said something about
and then when
she was 7 years old.
Yeah, then we went again, because children weren't allowed to go to India till they were 7, although it didn't apply to us, but I wanted her to be 7 when she met Baba, which I felt was the right age. So we went to India for her Navjot's, thread ceremony, what you call confirmation or whatever. So, and we had to sort of teach Mehera, Shireen, I'm calling Mehera now because my granddaughter's Mehera, teach Shireen, please be good, on your best behavior when you see Baba, don't be silly. Because she wasn't sociable, she was sort of shy, and I thought, oh my goodness, she's going to make a mess of everything then. So I said, just be good and behave nicely and greet Baba nicely. I didn't have to, afterwards I needn't have told her, because the way she greeted him, I couldn't believe it. She took the garland from my hand, long before, and she just garlanded him. And from there, as if Mani says, their little romance started, Baba's and hers. And then when we returned, Mani wrote a letter to me, which was dictated by Baba with gestures, because they'd never done that before. Each letter he gestured and Mani wrote. So it was, in the letter was the general letter saying that, he loved us and that we must be happy and all that. And then he said, Shireen means more to him than to either Adi and myself, and that we should keep her happy and make her happy. So I've done that. I tried to do that. I hope I've made her happy. I don't know. But, you know, it was a tall order, and you know, it's difficult in life to keep. You all must have children, and you must know how it is.
Could you repeat that order? I didn't quite get. Shireen means more to Baba.
More to Baba than to Adi and myself.
Oh, then Shireen means to you.
Yeah.
It's more to Baba. So did you have a hard time, like, disciplining her, and yet, you're supposed to keep her happy? Was that a conflict then, or?
Well, the usual thing of disciplining, but Adi was spoiling her sometimes, like fathers do spoil girls. And what Adi did say when I was expecting, So, anyway, I said that I would always name. Baba had told Mani before Shireen was born that I would have a girl. So, he told Mani, so. Now what else?
Well, I was just wondering about when you first went to England, I asked you this previously, what was the real motive? You said you just wanted to live somewhere different?
Oh, when we came to England?
When you first had the idea of going the step.
It was a step, but we realized, we were shifting from one place to another. And I might have been the one who wanted the idea was,
How old were you and Adi?
Well, Adi was 11 years older, about 11 years older than me. Oh, I was in my 20s. So, anyway, so I felt we were shifting around such a lot, and I felt I needed to do something,
So this was in the early 50s?
No.
Late 50s?
56.
56.
Yeah. And so Adi wanted to go to America. I wasn't keen to go to America then. Adi wanted to go to America, and Baba emphatically, when we asked, he said, no. If you want to go anywhere, go to England. And probably had a reason then too, because all the young people came after he dropped his body, to us, as soon as Baba dropped his body. Or then another incident is when we came for Dara Amrit's wedding. Before the wedding, the arrangement was done for the wedding, and we got the plans back from Mani and the dates we have to come, and the date for the wedding was. So we discussed it, and we thought, well, December is such a short holiday for Shireen, and she wouldn't have much time to be with Baba. So we thought the summer vacation would be nicer, to have the wedding in the summer, June, July. And I wrote back like an idiot to Mani, which I shouldn't have. And I got a message back, emphatic message back from Mani. Baba says, December, as the date as planned, otherwise no wedding. So we didn't know what the reason was, but he wouldn't have been there to perform
It's a beautiful film that we've seen.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have been there to perform the wedding. So, and then when we had to say leave after the wedding, we all had a little private meeting with Baba before we said our goodbyes, and I was with Baba and Iris, and Baba was so frail, you just felt so miserable, you couldn't do anything to help him in his suffering. And Iris said, oh, do you want to be on your own, Franey? Have you anything to ask Baba? I said, no, I don't want. Baba knows everything, what have I got to ask? And so Baba said, that's it. And then Baba said with gestures that at the end of the month everything will be all right. And it didn't mean anything then to me, but then afterwards when he dropped the body at the end of the month.
That was the last film, the wedding.
Yeah.
Did not Baba tell Shireen that she has to be educated in England? After her, I always was under the impression that after Shireen was educated in England, then she could leave. Then you would all leave.
Live where?
England.
Leave England? Oh, I don't know. I never heard that. I don't know.
Say that was
No. No, Amrit and Dara, Baba said they could go back to India after 2 children. So that's what they did. After having 2 children. Yeah, so they went back. But another incident, when we were leaving after the wedding, and Shireen was very sad. She was in tears when she said goodbye to Baba. And so we were at Bombay airport and on the plane, and the plane gets airborne, and suddenly she bursts out in tears, and I said, my goodness, what's happened to her? Suddenly she's sitting by my side and she cries. So I asked her, why are you crying so much? And I was so embarrassed, all the passengers looking at her. So she said, well, I won't be seeing Baba again. She knew she wouldn't.
Well, now it sounds overmodulated. What'd you do? Easy Rider, now you sound overmodulated. What'd you change?
Who's that?
She sort of had that intuition that she wouldn't see Baba again.
Yeah.
Franey, when you had Shireen, did you go back to work after she was a certain age, or did you?
No, I didn't, because there was no help in the house and to do everything. Then Adi had started an antique business. Antique business.
with Fred Moore.
Yeah. And so I used to do a little bit of work at home.
We'll try it again.
Clients at home.
When I had time, like some facials, electrolysis.
Yeah. I mean, because you sound like you really enjoyed that, like just being with people and
Oh yeah.
all that,
Yeah.
Adi and Fred were pretty good associates.
Oh yes. I mean, Fred had an eye for good antique stuff, and we had to sell a lot before we packed to come here, to get rid of a lot of stuff. So it was hard leaving quite a few things. I had to be ruthless in many things, all the collectibles we had. So it was hard going.
Now you're in America.
Yeah, but I've still got 3 years to travel before I know if I'm settling down or not, But I don't know if they'll accept me. Your government might not. They might say, go out.
Now if Shireen's a citizen.
No, well, yeah. Well, I hope they'll accept me. I don't know.
You having a good time?
Oh, great time. Except for Santa Barbara, which reminded me of England every day. So, the other days in up north California, it was just beautiful. I couldn't get over the sun. Every morning, the sun.
You get sun down here.
Yeah, and I'll get sun in New Mexico too. And a lot of rattlesnakes.
No, I never saw rattlesnakes in England.
Yeah. But I'm going back to mud houses, I was born and bred in a mud house, and I'm going back to one.
They're called adobe.
How did Dara become your stepson?
Huh?
How did Dara become your stepson?
Adi had married before.
Franey, did Baba pick the name Shireen, or was that a name you came up with?
No, I always wanted, if I had a girl, to call her Shireen after Baba's mother. And if it had been a boy, if she had been a boy, I would have called him Jamshed.
Was there any, you mentioned something about Baba's orders to you. Was there any orders that come to mind that you haven't talked about?
Orders for me?
Yeah, any special order throughout your life?
Well, we had to observe them when Baba was in the body, whatever orders came. I mean, Adi used to say, oh, it doesn't apply to us, we are family. I said, no, it applies to us. And then one time when I was expecting Shireen, we had an order of fasting and of not eating a thing and not even swallowing your saliva. And I was working, yeah. And I mean, they all thought I was a crackpot, you know, doing that. Everybody thought that. And I mean, I had to get up at 7 in the morning, go to work, stand in the bus, go to work, and stand all day. And I came back and then come and cook for Adi. And, you know, then had the evening meal, so I couldn't even swallow saliva.
Baba wanted you to do that even with Kat?
Well, it was an order, and I mean, I did it because it was an order for everyone. And Adi said not to. I said, no, I'll still do it.
What did Adi used to say about his brother God?
Well, he was his brother, and it must have been so difficult. I know it was difficult to live in his shadow.
He had had Adi travel with him quite a bit.
Yes, in the early years. Yeah.
And sometimes he interrupted Adi's plans to study certain things. I
What
was under
plan?
the impression that Adi was sometimes interrupted in his own plans, so that Baba,
Yeah.
he didn't have maybe the vocation that he might have had.
Oh yes, when Adi was going to college when he was uprooted, you know, from that. I mean, Adi was a very intelligent man. I mean, he had honors in English, honors in Persian. He spoke Persian fluently. He was so well read. I mean, he used to do crossword puzzles, you know, in the papers so quickly. Extremely.
Baba would just interrupt that.
Yeah.
Shireen, tell how Baba changed his birthday also.
Oh yes, that came as a surprise after Baba dropped his body, because we up till then were celebrating Adi's birthday on September the 18th according to his passport. And when Baba dropped his body, Mani for some reason wanted Adi's some official papers, and his birthday we had written on it. And she said, this is wrong, this is not his birthday. And she had the records of all her brothers and everybody's birthdays. And she said his birthday is the 10th of July. Yes, the 10th of July. So from then on we celebrated his birthday twice a year. That one day, it was one day, but no water, nothing to drink, nothing. And the previous evening you had to have your last meal at about, I think it was 5 o'clock in the evening. So it was quite a long way. Yeah. I mean, that used to come up quite often, you know. We had fast often. Well, in the early years when I was married, we had to all observe fast.
You know, you mentioned something I thought was interesting. You said on several occasions in your life, you either observed or were part of it yourself, where Baba would give advice, and then the person who received advice would later come back to Baba and say, well, didn't you really mean, you know, such and such and such? They try to change it.
Yeah, if Baba, you know, if you try to change, if you go to Baba and ask him for advice, and he gives it, but then you try to say, oh, Baba, wouldn't it be much better if I did this? So Baba would say, yes, go do it if you want to. But it would never, you know, it wouldn't be successful. I mean, I know one instance, I mean, I think my uncle Saroj, I think Bilu auntie told me this, that this was a few years before he died. He had one of these operations on a prostate or something, and the man Baba told him to go to, the surgeon, wasn't available. And he went to somebody else, and he had so many problems that he suffered such a long time, and it's an ordinary operation, he had a long suffering because he didn't wait till the other surgeon came. And so many people have had that experience.
So we asked Baba for advice.
Yeah.
Even now, we should be careful.
We should be careful. Don't say, "Oh, can I do this?" No, I mean now I don't know what the situation is. I think just use your common sense, your intuition, and just pray to Baba that you're doing the right thing.
Is there any moment that in your life with Baba where you remembered him in a special way? Something that just stood out in your mind? Sometimes when you're just thinking to yourself, sometimes and thinking back, there's something about Baba. Do you see him in a certain way? Or?
Well, I see him as God. And I mean, every day now that God increases, my love gets stronger and stronger. And I mean, I'm a changed person from what I was. I was such a nervous, sensitive. He's given me a lot of strength. I know.
Did he change your birthday?
No, he didn't change my birthday. No. No.
At what point did you realize that Baba was God?
Well, when I saw him at 11, I knew he was somebody special. And then as I saw him, every time I met him, my love for him grew and grew, Then I used to hear stories from Sarosh Uncle, then Adi Senior, because I used to go to Adi Senior's a lot, and that's where I started to learn to type with him. And I think probably my contact with Baba was from the very early days. I told you all that when my mother was expecting me, Sarosh Uncle was going to Manzil Amin because he used to go, he was one of the people who stayed with Baba at Manzil Amin in Bombay. So my mother was his sister-in-law, and he saw her that she was looking sad because she'd lost her first child after marriage, and so he said, "Well, you want me to tell something to Baba, you have anything?" So she said, "Just tell him that, will this child live, she lost her first child." And he came back and he said, Baba said not to worry, that she'd have a girl and everything will be okay. So then Sarosh, so my contact is from my early days. Baba, my uncle Sarosh talked about me to Baba. Born, yeah. So that's how I feel, because both my mother and my uncle told me the story. And then he piped in and said, "Look, if that's true, then you name her Franey." Sarosh said, if what Baba says is true, that you have a girl, then you name her Franey. So I was named Franey after that.
What does Franey mean?
Franey, he loved somebody called Franey. He couldn't marry her at the time. He married Leelu, The person he loved married somebody else.
What did Franey mean?
Franey was the girl he loved, Sarosh Uncle loved.
No, does it have a meaning in...
There's no. The Persian name is something quite Parengese. I mean, then it's shortened to Franey. I think some Persian people would know that. I mean, I have no knowledge of it.
Wanting to be here.
These discarnated voices.
The ghost watching the show.
Entities.
Franey, tell about the story of the audience in China.
Oh yes, I forgot about it. On one of his visits to Baba.
Okay, the question was a story about Adi in China.
Yeah. So Baba was in China at the time, and Herbert Davy, you must have heard of, Kitty, you all know Kitty. Kitty brother Herbert was with Baba and the men Mandli at the time in China, and they were all, Adi told me the story, so they were all given rooms in pairs or triplets or whatever, the Mandli. So Adi was with Jal and I think Kaka or somebody. And it was so hot, so all of them stripped to their trunks and slept on their beds. And the windows were wide open, and whilst they were asleep, just going to turn the light off, a creature flies in and sits on Adi's chest, a huge thing. So there's screaming and yelling. It was a big bat. So it was a big, huge bat. So Baba hears this noise, so he tells Herbert Davy, he said, look, go and see what the noise is about. Now Herbert, being a real Paka Englishman, he comes in, he knocks at the door, and he comes in, they say, come in, and he said, he doesn't ask them what the trouble is. He says, now, boys, quiet down and sleep. You're disturbing Baba. He doesn't say what's wrong, and he shuts the door and goes away. And here Adi's got this creature, all the scratches of the claws and everything.
What fun they had?
Well, they got some disinfectant and rubbed it. It was all right.
Did Adi ever tell you any stories about his visit to Los Angeles?
Oh yeah, so the one, I think they're in the book now.
Yeah, the one about the Tallulah bacon.
Yeah.
He told you about that one?
Yeah.
What was his impression of Ali?
Well, I don't think he had a great impression because he was not dressed like Baba was,
He had the shoe.
The shoe, and they were all scruffy because Chanji was the caretaker of their clothing, and he was such a stingy person, so the Adi says, and he wouldn't spend a penny on their clothes. They used to get all these second-hand socks, and he wouldn't touch a second-hand sock. And so he asked Chanji, he said, look, Baba's all well-dressed and all immaculate. Here we are like sort of urchins, street urchins, one with a sitar, one with the tablas, and we're going to this pick fair, and meeting Mary Pickford and heaven knows who else, and then he said, my soul, it just needs a few stitches, can't that be done? So he said no. So he tied it up, and he was trying, when he was talking to somebody, he was trying to hide the shoe all the time.
Yeah, the sole was quite...
every time he had to sort of be careful that it didn't flap up.
But they didn't bring that up to Baba and say, oh, Baba, couldn't we just...
Well, Baba didn't take, he gave Chanji the order to look after them, so he didn't, And at one time, somewhere else, I think, they went to some performance, either in New York or somewhere, some theatre, Noreena's choice it was. And so Adi was so tired by that time, because he was also sort of Baba's ballet, sort of shaving him time and interpreting. And he was very tired, so they went to the show and he slept through the whole thing. He didn't see anything. So when they all came out, each one was just to get good comments from everyone. Baba had his own way, so that Noreena felt good that she taken them to a nice show. So everybody said something nice, but Adi's turn came and Baba said, now how did you like it? He said, I didn't watch it, I fell asleep. So he got such a whack on his face. And then he couldn't understand why he was slapped. He was speaking the truth. Then Baba told him afterwards, you should have at least made up something that you liked it. So I was trying to, make Noreena feel good.
Should have said, gave me the best dreams ever.
Georgine?
You said that the one time Adi said, oh, it doesn't apply to us, we're family. Did he do that kind of thing a lot?
Probably did. He did.
Well, I think we're out of time.
Oh dear, have I gone over the time?
Thank you very much, Franey.
Oh,
Good hour.